Like me mid-yawn.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Inspire Me Forward. My name's Linda Watson. I am the founder, and I am your host today for our 20th episode. I think this should be a woohoo. This is 20 episodes. That's amazing that we've done so much and talked to so many people. This one's called Expectations and Loss, and it's going to be awesome, as they all are. And I would like to give Elysia Buss our
Us.
the bless, sorry.
It's
I was working hard on the first name to pronounce it right.
okay. Took me straight back to middle school.
I'd like to give you just a few minutes just to introduce yourself.
Well, thank you so much, Linda, for having me on. It's always a great pleasure and privilege to get to connect with you and have our wonderful chats and be on podcasts like the one we have today. I am currently located in Charlottesville, Virginia. I have a postgraduate degree in equine assisted learning, and I have a master's in education, which lends itself to me getting to do empowerment coaching. And the fun thing about expectations and loss is that oftentimes when you're a coach, people expect different things from you and how you navigate your own mental health and struggles. So I'm excited to get to vulnerably have this conversation and try and knock some of that stigma off. And as we provide grace for ourselves and others.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I always have something to fill in a little spot here and just something, tidbit of information. And I always find it comes to me in the last minute. The 2 days before, I'm like, oh, what am I going to say? And then I leave it alone. and then a podcast or a radio interview comes on. I'm like, there it is. And I didn't have anything today until a meeting the group of us had earlier. We had about 10 people on a call earlier. And someone said something to the effect of turning, when we have something like this, is turning things back around. So you saying something sometimes turns it back around on the person that's listening to you. And that person goes, oh. And so this person was talking about that and the wisdom in the women that were there. And there's a piece of me just went, oh, that's me. Because we don't always see ourselves in our stories.
Yeah.
We don't see ourselves as the pilot of our own journey of being vulnerable, of being wonderful and wise and beautiful. We don't see that. So to have somebody sort of say those words and sort of turn it around, there was just this moment of almost a gasp from me going, oh, she's right. Look at these 10 wonderful women that are sitting here talking about the beautiful things they do. So it just reminded me so much of this, of that anybody listening or watching this is like, just the wisdom that's here, turn back on yourselves and look at the beautiful wisdom that's within you, because we all have it. And
I so love that.
Oh yeah, it was just that moment of, oh, my heart just, your heart sometimes just opens a little bit more because of just those aha moments. So that was it came like within 4 hours before this. It was like
that's what it was meant to be.
Exactly. Universe, like, boom, here it is. Here it is.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing, because I think that sometimes we get caught up in our lives, and especially if you have just like what you would consider a basic life, right? You go to your 9 to 5, you come home, you dinner, like if you have family, you chat with your family. It's just like very like routine pattern life. And I think sometimes we just get stuck in that and we forget that the natural wisdom that we have by living our own unique lives, and each individual experience that we all have with individuals in our lives are moments that will never again occur and are singularly unique in their experience. And thereby, from that in your own life history, you carry inherent wisdom that no other person could have. And as you share your own personal story, you never know what a simple nugget of experience can give to another person in recognition of their own.
Absolutely. And you never know who's listening and who it affects. And
right. And you might never know.
You wouldn't. And I always go back to there was a moment years ago. We used to have our own farm, and it was years after the farm had closed, and somebody got in touch with me through Facebook, and they said, is this Linda Watson that had this and this? And I'm like, yep. And next thing I know, I had this huge letter of thank you. It was like, I think it was, for me, it was about impact. And you just never know the impact you have on someone or on people or on lives, you'll never know. So don't try to guess. And, we
Yeah.
do workshops and things sometimes like, oh, were they happy? Did they leave,
Yeah, for
fulfilled?
sure.
And, we all go through that. But 15 years later, here's somebody saying, thank you for the safe place you provided us 15 years ago. And it just,
Yeah. I have a story like that as
share,
well.
do
There
share.
was I have a couple stories, actually, just two very specific stories.
Mhm.
I'm happy to share them if you want, but
Oh,
we can move along if
oh,
you want to.
no. Please.
So one was from I'm like, which one should I tell first? So I went to a Waldorf teacher training, and we had a large group of about 30 people, I would say. And there was one woman in the group. She was just sort of like calm, quiet sort of individual. And she, I feel like, did something with like libraries. And one weekend, I did something that some people would consider rather reckless. And that is that in November of the previous year, I had been pulling into a bakery, and a man definitely pulled in with his Porsche that was beautiful. And I was just like, hey, that's a great car. And he's like, thanks. Then I was driving a Subaru Forester, and he was like, thanks, but it's shit in the rain. We were in Seattle, Washington. And he's like, and I can't take it camping. And so I was like, well, I'll tell you what, like, you can take my Forester for the weekend, and I'll take your Porsche. So we laughed, and he gave me his business card, and he was the president and founder of a helicopter kit manufacturing company that had a base in Seattle and in Phoenix. And so fast forward to January, and he sends me an email, whatnot. I emailed him because he was like, the phone number's not good, but the email is. So I emailed him in November, finally got back to me in January. It's like, I just got back from my house in South Africa. What are you doing? And I made a joke, and I was just like, what are you doing today? He's like, oh, I'm in Phoenix. I said, how are you going to take me to dinner then? Are you going to fly me there? And he like paused for a second, and he's like, yeah, because he'd sent me his phone number, and he flew me to Phoenix, Arizona for dinner the next day. And so, and I was late coming back to school, and they were very long days. And so I got to go and had this amazing experience, and got to go skydiving in wind tunnel, and got to tour the facility, and had dinner with like 6 of his different employees. And then I flew back, and it was this wonderful experience. And I got to get on a plane with nothing other than like my ID and my debit card. And if no one has had that experience, I highly recommend it, because it's just such a cool experience to get on a plane with nothing. And I didn't tell anybody except for one friend that I was doing this, by the way, because I thought everybody was going to think I was crazy, and I didn't want to hear it. So I came back to school, and I told my story to my group of 30 colleagues in the Waldorf teacher training. And um, this one woman listened to my story, and she was inspired by how brave and free I was. And years later, many, many years later, she came back to me, and she told me how inspired she was, and how she had gone on, and she was a dancer, and she had met this amazing man in Brazil who was I think he was a political refugee or something like that.
Mhm.
And for the next like 10 plus years, these two have been like traveling the world, having him sell his story at colleges, like inspiring all these extra people. And they've had this just beautiful, loving relationship. And none of that would have happened had I not been brave and talked to that one person, and been brave and gone on a plane, and then been brave enough to share my story with 30 other people.
Yeah.
And I was just like having fun. Like I was being me. Like I didn't do it to inspire people. I was just like, this sounds great, right? And then the other story was about a young man who I met in a bakery. This theme with bakeries, I guess. Like, and he was a very sort of sheltered young man. And I took him back to the place where I was staying with another friend of mine, and we were hanging out. And then I took him out dancing. And what he hadn't come to within himself was that he was actually gay, and he wanted to be a model. And he was just like, had lived this quiet little life, and he hadn't been brave enough to really explore life. And many, many years later, again, because I was just being me, like inviting people because I'm super inclusive. And I'm like, hey, come have fun with me and my friends. And yeah, I think it might have been 10 years later, I ran into him, and he took me out to like lunch. And he told me how me just like inviting him to come with us from that bakery completely changed his life. And he then like fully stepped into his experience of being gay, and he went and he did modeling professionally, and he created these really cool like leather belts and pouches and different things, and he got to live this big full beautiful life just because I saw him and I included him and I accepted him and I created a safe space for him to expand his range and be like, maybe I can go like do this. Maybe it's okay for me to be myself. Maybe I can explore that. And that's the beauty of just treating people as people, no matter like what they look like, their socioeconomic status, their religion, their politics, the color of their skin, like whatever. Just show up and be like, hey, I see you. Want to come be part of my experience if it's just even for an evening?
Exactly. Those are beautiful stories. Thank you.
Thanks.
And that it's interesting that inspiration, if we follow that inspiration, was almost, it sounds like the word courage keeps coming there. That one person's courage is another person's inspiration, and it just loops around and around and around. So,
Yeah.
wow.
And it's funny, like sometimes we don't even see it as courage. Like we're just being ourselves, you know, like we're living our lives.
Yeah.
And so sometimes people tell me that I'm inspirational or courageous or like whatever adjective you want to put in that. And they tell me that I'm beautiful, right? But I'm just like, I always say thank you, but I'm just being me. Like I just live my life for whatever reason I need to do X or Y or Z. And oftentimes it's a source of survival for me. But I'm like,
Exactly,
what are you going to do? Like, what's the alternative? You're like going to lay down in the dirt?
Exactly. But you seize a moment that maybe others don't see, and it's in seizing that moment and seeing not only you in that moment, but seeing others in that moment, and that inclusivity. It brings me back to a quote I heard a while back, and I'm going to butcher it. I'd have to look it up, but I'm going to try. But it's like, unity will never be as long as we keep excluding others. And that really reminded you of those stories, especially with the second one there, is that it's just including. It's just not judging and including. And how beautiful is that? That's awesome.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Like this
Well,
shy, modest young man who is like, you know, and I'm not shy or modest, obviously. but, but I could still see him and honor him from where he was and not push him, but invite him. And I think that's the difference that's so important, is that oftentimes with expectations, we're pushing on people instead of inviting them with curiosity into a conversation.
Exactly. So of all this, let's jump into my first question. Is Tell me about a time that you were the recipient of an act, like a random act of kindness. We hear of people doing them. Tell me about a time that you were the recipient of one, and how was that? What was it, and how was that for you?
You know, it's on different layers. Because we oftentimes look at random acts of kindness as something large, I think. But a couple days ago, I complimented a guy on his license plate. It was incognito. It was a sports car, and I thought it was really funny. He happened to be extremely handsome. And he, yeah, exactly. I just, you know, who doesn't like pretty people? Unless they're jerks, and then we should just not talk to them. Yep. But no, but like a random act of kindness was his willingness to engage with me, right? Like we were two cars right next to each other in a light, right? And he didn't have to kindly engage with me. And when I asked him his name, and he asked me what mine was and told me that it was a beautiful name. And like, because sometimes just engaging with somebody can be an act of kindness.
Completely, yeah.
You know, it's something simple. And yeah, and so there's that. And then I've had other people that have helped me out with my vehicle, right? Like I've been stuck on the side of the road, and people have stopped and asked me, like, do you need a tow? Do you need a ride? Do you need to use my AAA? You know, those sorts of things, and trying to help. Like I remember my truck broke down and the transmission line had blown, and I had 3 different men stop, and I was in the middle of countryside, like I was nowhere near anything. And I had 3 different guys stop and try and fix my truck for me.
That's awesome.
Which is just like super sweet. But yeah, that's probably like
Yeah.
some of the
And
more recent acts of kindness.
well, and all of them, and whatever, if we take away the size of them, is that willingness to engage.
Absolutely, the willingness to engage. And like when I lost my business location because I'm allergic to marijuana, and the people above where we were in a tattoo shop had, I don't know if they were hotboxing it up there or what the
Oh
situation was,
no.
but it was permeating the whole downstairs area of this chiropractic office. And so I found myself without a place that I could work. I'd lost like $700 worth of work that week from them doing that. And so I'd like hit the wall. I had to move. And I'm part of this Facebook group called the Boss Babes of Seville. And I had put a couple days prior, I call out being like, hey, does anybody have a room that I can rent or like available? And one of the boss babes came forward, and she allowed me to come use her space at a discounted rate for a month when life was very, very chaotic. Because it all fell in the same timeline of when my fiance broke up with me like 10 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And so that was absolutely, I would consider a random act of kindness, because she didn't have to rent that room to me.
No, no. But it's,
And
I
it
think
was a
we at
huge
heart
deal
want
for me.
to. I think at heart we want to help each other. Like it's
Yeah. I'm like down with, I'm like thinking about like all the things, and I'm just like, yeah. And then another one from the group, when I needed to be out of the house for a month because of the whole breakup situation, she let me stay in her home for free for 3 weeks
wow,
in the countryside on like
pretty
600
special.
acres. And she had only met me like twice before for maybe 10 minutes a piece in networking events. And she was leaving to go on vacation for like 10 days. And she just handed me the keys to her house.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty special.
So yeah,
Yeah.
and that's all about like building relationships. I think that like what you do is building relationships
Mhm.
that allows you to both manifest those sorts of situations to pull into you, and for people to trust you,
Mhm. Yeah,
because you're
absolutely.
not like trying to use anybody, right? Like they
Yeah,
know that there's a purity of the situation that's occurring and a safety within that.
sure.
Um, yeah, and I do lots of random acts of kindness. It's honestly one of my favorite things to do on the
Of
planet.
course, absolutely. But I always,
It's my game.
I think what the reason I asked that question, it's about the art of receiving. And so often
Yes, absolutely. Of
we're not as we're okay or good at giving, but the act of
course.
receiving is a lot harder for us. And
Yeah.
so that's why I asked that question, because it's just that act that I was able to receive this, and I was able to be courageous or thankful or whatever through it, and just really appreciate it for what it is. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, you're very welcome. Yeah, I got a lot better about receiving after I had my first back surgery,
Ah,
because I feel like I definitely had more of like a white knight syndrome before I had my back surgery at 30, and then suddenly being put in the position of uh, being homeless and having to recover from back surgery and being forced into a position to accept a lot of help was
exactly.
very humbling for me.
Sometimes the universe says, no, you have to learn it now.
Yeah, I've got a great joke about that. I say like God had to knock me down not one, not two, but three times before I really got the point.
That fool me once. I
Oh my gosh.
can't remember that one.
I was a little stubborn and more arrogant in my youth and entitled. So I'm actually quite grateful to be in the position I am, so I can be a better person in my more full authentic self, because as we all know, entitlement and arrogance comes from fear and insecurity.
Exactly. Exactly. Okay, so let's jump way back now. Way back. What I'm finding as I've done 20 of these now is that there's some through lines. There's some similarities. And
Okay.
one thing everybody has talked about, and I call it a touchstone, but it's something in your childhood. What was something in your childhood that, as life went on, life sort of said, don't do that anymore. And now you're sort of coming back to it. One person talked about daydreaming and was
Hmm.
told, stop daydreaming. And it would, be it parental, be it society, whatever it may be, those pressures and those check boxes of life have us stop doing that. For me, it was dancing. It's
Mm.
so what's one touchstone for you that you remember as a child or youngster?
Well, I'm going to give you a trifecta because I'm not very good at doing singular things,
Okay.
clearly. So when I was young, I wanted to work with horses, and I wanted to be a photographer, and I wanted to be a dancer. And of course, my parents were like, you're not going to make money at any of that. Don't do it. And then I went into teaching because clearly you make bank doing that. And, and yeah, and those are just such a deep passion of mine. So I now I still dance, but I integrate dance into my empowerment coaching, especially having to do with the concept of control and expectations. And it's a really fun thing for me to get to do with my clients because, like, when we work with horses, there's no denying your engagement in partner dancing. It's just what it is.
Exactly.
And it really helps to bring heightened awareness to people without them putting up a giant wall, is what I found. And then photography is interesting because I wanted to travel the world and be like a journalist and photographer for National Geographic. And I am more wanting to do video now through getting to travel around and do speaking engagements and have that be my thing, like going to retreats and facilitating and all these different sorts of things, and wanting to do summits. And so that's like its own like kind of twist on that. And then working with horses, I did in 2017, working with at-risk youth who had dropped out of high school. And so I was just like, I can make money doing the things that I love doing, just in a slightly different way because I'm not super great at doing anything that's in the box.
100%. No, I like those three. Those are three very familiar ones. And life never comes not gonna say never, rarely comes the way we think it's going to.
Oh, mine certainly hasn't.
Yeah.
I don't think I can think of like a single thing in my life that went according to plan.
I did a tarot reading with a dear friend of mine, and we went through everything, and she pulled the last card. We'd been talked and talked and talked. She pulls the last card, and she looked at it, and she looked at me, and she laughed, and she said, but it isn't going to turn out the way you expect.
You're like, but that is what I expect.
No, I had it all. I had things planned. I knew it.
Oh,
Boom,
you
boom,
have things
boom.
planned for that one?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And she was like, nope. I'm like, okay. So I always look back on that and laugh. So let's start now. Let's jump forward. I'd love to hear and then we'll sort of circle around. But what do you talked about public speaking, but in your bit at the beginning, you talked about like at the preview and those sentences you sent me, you talked about being afraid to public speak and things like that.
Oh, yeah.
What are you using your voice for or in now?
So what I'm using my voice for and in now is really to do the YouTube channels that I have and to increase awareness of what's going on out in the world and help people not feel so alone in their struggles. So I have people on, men, women, equestrian people, to vulnerably share about an obstacle that they've overcome in life and the wisdom they acquired thereof. And the reason that I do that is it creates a standpoint of being a permissionary. As we share our own stories, then others feel safe to do the same because they feel less likely to be judged. And they also don't feel like they're as alone in their struggles. Because I feel like so oftentimes, like when we're in the thick of it, we feel like we're the only person in the world that's experiencing that thing, right?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
And so that's how I use my voice authentically, be it online or just engaging with people anywhere I go, is really trying to take time to see people for where they are and create that safe space where they too can have a voice. And so when I work in confidence, like going out into the world, people see me in that space, but it's not an arrogant sort of confidence. And they're like, oh, that person's cool. That would like magnetizes them in and then creating that space.
Yeah, absolutely. I had something I was going to say, and then
and then I kept talking. I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I said I'm jotting things down. I love the word permissionary. I've never heard that word before, but I love that.
Thank you. I got it from Isabella Braveheart. She has an amazing program.
What's that?
Isabella.
Oh, bless you.
I think I got in time. I was just like, mute. We don't need to have that on there. There might be a couple more. It's this like giant ring light. It's just like it makes my throat like all red from all the heat from the lamp. I'm just like, whew, it's hot over here. It's hot.
Not here.
Isabella Brave. What was her? You can look her up on Facebook and online.
Sure.
I think she's in Los Angeles right now. She's an incredible spoken word person,
Mm,
super
mm.
intense, but like her programs are really
I
transformative. So
love spoken word.
um be ready to be pushed
I
on
took a spoken
your
word class.
boundaries
I
if
took
you
a
want to.
course. Yeah, it's
And
hard.
not just yeah, but not just on that, but just like how she runs her challenges. Like she
Yeah.
holds a great space, but like be
Oh
ready to find
yeah.
your edges
Yeah.
because she'll take you
Oh,
there.
it was it
She'll
was
take you there.
cathartic. It was
Yeah, I
cathartic. We
imagine.
had to bring together, we had to bring in, we had to spend a week and bring in a poem of what we were the most angry about. And we could swear in our spoken word, we could whatever. It was
I could write one right now.
I'm for me, that was cathartic. That was like
Oh,
a
I bet.
permission, the
Yeah.
permissionary to say,
Yep.
let it all out, let it.
That's so awesome.
And yeah, that spoken word is so we'll
Thank
definitely
you
look
for
that up.
sharing that.
Yeah, well, it was. I wouldn't share the poem, I don't think, but
There's time and place for all things.
so then now let's get down to the nitty gritty here.
Mm.
Um, when do you find that? Where do you find that voice was lost? Is a hard word for me. Like tamed. That society wanted to tame you in using your voice and say no, don't, you know, don't speak that loud, don't speak that way, don't be
Oh,
so, you know, those things. So can you share a few, not, I'm sure there's many, like we all have
so
numerous
many.
times, but
There's so many. I'm like,
which
which era would you like that from?
I will let you
Since
choose a few from whichever era you'd like.
um I'll go for a few because I feel like they layer on top of each other. So I'll start from when I was young just because of that. So I was a super happy-go-lucky kid and loved to engage with everybody. So that much hasn't changed about me. But when I was 13 years old, the first like sexual romantic spark I ever had was with a girl. I like girls and boys. And that is still kind of a tender thing for me to share with people because I didn't come out to my family till I was like 36 and 40, I think. And that's just to my biological mom and dad. I don't think my stepdad or my brothers even know that. If they watch this, now they will. But but the thing is growing up in Olympia, Washington, in a middle class family, that was not really a thing that was spoken about. You know, I'm 43 years old and I felt very different. And I just didn't feel like I had any safe space to be able to have that conversation. And so I lived in my voice was shut down from that standpoint of like part of me never really getting to be explored, communicated about. I think that's a big part of the reason why I had suicidal ideations every day from age 13 to 26 that nobody recognized that I was struggling with. And so I navigated that on my own. And I think that's part of where a tremendous amount of my personal resilience comes from is navigating that sort of difficulty and not feeling seen or heard or understood
Mhm.
or truly accepted because I wasn't all of myself. And so like holding yourself at distance because like I'm a very gregarious person. I always have been very nurturing and loving and I didn't want to make any of my female friends uncomfortable by sharing that. And I didn't know how to navigate it because I didn't have any modeling. So there's that. And so that was part of my voice being stolen. And then when I went into education, um, there's so much hypocrisy in the administration aspect of education. And even in Waldorf education, there's a lot of just like power structures that are happening and expectations of teachers versus kids. And then there's parent, it's just like it list goes on and on. And I have a real problem with injustice. And when I was in my youth, like I talked about the arrogance and entitlement thing, I had zero respect for powers. To be, I had no problem telling people straight to their face at high levels what their issue was. That did not serve me super well.
No.
Lots of growth opportunities. But then the lack of the voice came when my finances went down and to the point where I wasn't safe to be able to stand up for the things necessarily that I wanted to without being tossed out. And so that was a real struggle for me. And then my whole life, I've been told that I was too loud,
Mhm.
too loud. My personality is too loud. My voice is too loud. like I'm too much. Like literally for as long as I can remember, I have been told that I am too much, and that continues to today for some people. And my family is very private also, which is why I'm too much, because I'm clearly not one of those. Uh, but yeah, that was hard to always kind of be shamed for being too much and being inappropriate, and when I just wanted to be transparent and honest and be accepted for who I was and where I was in life. So my voice was definitely squelched in regards to like family matters. What I was allowed to say to like my brothers and my family, like there were certain things that like my dad, my stepdad, he's been an amazing person. He's taken amazing care of our family, but he doesn't like heavies. So like this conversation would never happen,
Mhm.
you know? And that is hard when you are not able to work through things.
Yeah.
Because I'm definitely the kind of person in any relationship I have, I'm like, let's get down to it. Like I don't want to worry about it. I want you to just tell me straight to my face exactly what your issue is with me, preferably without being an asshole. But like if that's what has to happen for us to get through it, just do what you got to do. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to
Yeah.
sit here wondering. So yeah, not having a voice is hard for me. And so sometimes when people won't engage with me, that also makes me feel like I don't have a voice, because if I don't have a safe space to have conversations in relationship that I feel like really need to be had to have a healthy outcome, then my voice gets taken from me, or rather I allow my voice to be taken from me, because narrative is extremely important in life. um, and then it internalizes and I spin out and I get depressed and my mental health suffers a lot
Yeah.
if I'm not doing the right things for myself. So yeah, that's a very long answer to your question
No,
in
that's
meandering.
a beautiful answer. In fact, let's, if we can stay there for a bit, not in the heavies, but
I'm like,
that
we can
that
go. I have more. Do you want more heavies? I can add to it.
no. But you really, I think I want to touch on what you just said, that the mental, like not using our voice and how it affects our mental health.
Yeah,
I'd love to grow on that a bit. I think it's a really important point. So
sure.
yeah, if you want to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, for instance, we'll take when I was young, right? When I was 13 and I to 26, when I was having all those struggles. I think that if I well, I don't think I know for a fact that if I had had somebody like me in my life would have been radically different, because I would have had somebody creating a safe space that I could have talked to, somebody
Mm,
that would have like just shared with me and made me feel normal, and made me feel like it was okay for me to be my authentic self, to normalize conversation and what non-reactive conversation looks like. Negate that when you like have all your emotions bubbling up, and
mm,
how do you stop from spinning out and feel like you can love yourself because you can accept yourself, and what is self-worth look like? And I saw an interesting sort of clip on Instagram right before this, is like how as women, whether or not we're good is dependent upon what we offer other people. Like, are you a good wife? Are you a good
mm,
mother? Are you a good sister? Are you a
like
good
that.
daughter? Like, are you a good worker? Like, what are you doing to provide for the world to give you value? I'm a single woman. I've never been married and I have no children. So I'm already like a unicorn out. Like, how do I provide value? And having to kind of like justify that as we get older too. It's
Yeah,
just like, what are you doing? And if you're not doing those things, then you're selfish, is kind of the narrative that's oftentimes handed to us.
yeah.
So I found as an empowerment coach that when people don't teach you the foundational aspects of existence, like boundaries and nonverbal communication and how to regulate your emotions, and more than that, to not shame yourself when you struggle to do so, to forgive yourself and give yourself
Mm,
grace, because that's the other part that we get caught up on that I feel like a lot of people just don't talk about.
mhm,
Um, is that it is totally natural for you to feel those things, because we live on this planet. And for, I don't know about these ladies, but we're
mm,
in, like, I'm in the United States. So this is like a
exactly.
rhetoric that we grow up with. And it's
Mhm,
it's like it's okay for us to experience the full spectrum of human emotion. What's important is for us to not get stuck in any of those
stuck in
one
it. Yeah,
things,
exactly. Yeah.
including love, because
Mhm,
like in new love especially, like it is all consuming. I feel like for most people, at least for like the front end of that, you're like,
Mm.
oh, it's hormones going on. You're like, this is great. I'm getting the things that I want and I need. But like, if somebody loves you that you don't love, that's oftentimes called a stalker. That person loves you.
Mm.
It's not the kind of good. That's not the kind of love you're looking for, you
Yeah.
know. And it's about balance,
Yeah.
right, and boundaries, and acknowledging, okay, like I'm feeling this. Where's it coming from?
Yeah.
And to just be like, what do I need to do to allow it to functionally be transmuted into something else? Like rage, for instance, is a completely justifiable emotion to experience when you experience or see injustice.
Hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Right. But how do we transmute that rage?
Exactly. Yeah.
It's not acceptable
Yeah.
for us to go like punch somebody,
Exactly.
unless you're
Yeah.
defending yourself.
Yeah. Don't kill the first
Um,
one. Yeah.
right, exactly. It's just like, but if you want to go, like I hit softballs. I have a bucket of like 40 softballs in my truck that I carry all the time because you just never know when you need to go release some energy.
Of course. Yeah. Finding
Not
that
that I
healthy
live in a
way.
space of rage, but my
No,
fiance
no.
did just break up with me like 10 weeks ago. So like I've been to the ball field.
Of course. Of
But
course.
like, it's just a
Yeah.
natural sort of thing. It's like and somebody like, yes, like if you want to go to your car and scream animalistically, that's okay. Get it out of your
Mm.
body. Like, don't
Mm.
have it stuck inside of you. Don't judge yourself or think that you're crazy because you're rage screaming. You're not crazy. You're actually way more functional than the person that's shoving that back in their body.
Mhm, mhm.
That's
Exactly.
crazy for us to continue to shove our emotions back in our bodies. That's what creates disease and pain in our
Mhm,
bodies because somatic experiences is the thing. And if you don't know what
mhm,
somatics are, I highly recommend you look it up on the internet and find
mhm.
somebody that can help you with it because
Sure,
we all could probably use a little bit
for
of
sure,
help.
for sure. Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Okay. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you. That's
you're
I think
welcome.
that's so important. That's a sort of first that tie between not using our voice and that mental health and where it can
Yeah,
spiral down to and where we can bring it up from. So
yeah, you just need to stop.
where did your you've said you've always been that outgoing, outspoken person. Where did that come from, do you think? Or was it just in you, or was
I
there
feel
a
like it's just me. I feel like, it's I did have shyness when I was younger, especially with boys, which most people would find hilarious because I'm a tremendous flirt these days. But I didn't have for much of my life when I wasn't terrified of boys. Because when I was young in middle school, I would literally like if a boy tried to talk to me, this is not an exaggeration, people. This is like real life. A boy tried to talk to me, which I'm bright red. I would start sweating profusely. I would shake. I couldn't talk. And I would literally turn and run the opposite direction. This happened. Now I see attractive man and I walk straight up to him and I'm like, hi, what are you doing? What's your name?
thing? So what was the catalyst there? What was the That's a great segue, but where was our what was your catalyst? And I'm sure they're different. We all have different catalysts and
Mm,
moments, but what were some
yeah,
of your
no,
catalysts that
I
brought you
I
forward?
know. Yeah. So when I was younger, and this is also like another heavy, so I felt pretty powerless, like during those teenage times, right? Because I couldn't share. And so connection and like promiscuity, that was my power source.
Mhm.
So when I was 13 years old, everybody else was like getting their first kiss from boys, right? And I was just like, I hadn't been kissed yet. And I'm a fairly impatient person. I've gotten way better, but there's still some in there. And so I found a boy. He was like a friend of one of my brothers or something. And I, like convinced him to go play basketball. And then I like grabbed him and kissed him. And I was like, sweet, got that over with. And then it was just like full on from there. I didn't have like sex with anybody. So I was 18, but like finding people to make out with and just like seducing people or whatever. And that's not necessarily something I'm super proud of, but coming to a point that I recognized that like I was just feeling so powerless and being able to navigate that and pull that in was my only source of power, was a big deal for me. And I feel like we don't talk about that, especially with young men and women these days, to destigmatize it and recognize it for what it is so that we can give them power in healthier ways. Not that there's anything wrong with sexual engagement, though I think that people should probably wait a little bit longer. Um, but because we're using it, I feel like, for the wrong reasons, right? Because there's nothing wrong with sex and like flirtation and all those different things, but it shouldn't be about power. It should be about connection. And just finding that sort of like love and engagement and that way. And so, because you asked the question, is just like, where did I find that? And so it transferred from like that power structure to getting really comfortable within that ability to approach people and navigate a situation and pull in a crowd. So like I'm able to like walk into a room, and I'm sure you people, like you've met people before that do this if you're not one yourself, is that when you walk into the room, you can command that room.
Sure.
I am one of those people.
Mhm.
But it took me a long time to be able to get to a point that I was truly comfortable within myself, to command it in a way that wasn't just like raw, unfiltered sexual energy that was like a volcano just exploded in the room and it was impossible not to notice it.
Exactly. It's that control of that energy.
So now it's just like me and my beautiful shining light instead of like a ton of sexual energy.
Well, exactly. Well, and I would guess you entitled this expectation and loss, but perhaps your expectations changed, or your intentions perhaps changed from the power to connection.
Well, in regards to, I mean, do you want me to? Because I can definitely. Do we want to flip into the expectations real and loss really quick? Because I can totally do it because it is important.
Go for it. We're good.
So, in regards to expectations and loss, part of the reason my recent relationship, I feel like failed, is because we both had expectations for the other. And I think that expectations ruin all kinds of relationships, be it business partnerships, family relationships, like relationships and partnership as lovers, and, men and women are like whatever dynamic you fall within. Because one, we oftentimes don't articulate what those expectations are of another person. And even if we do, we don't necessarily deliver it well. And then we also don't follow it up with how do I create a space where that person can meet my expectations? And are those expectations reasonable for me to ask for? Because there's a lot of entitlement that goes in expecting anything from another human being. Because, like, just because we expect something from someone does not require them to do it for us. Not an animal, not a person, like not a business, like, and I mean, businesses sometimes, granted, they promise us things. I digress. But like with people, I feel like we've just come to this thing where we think that just because we expect somebody to call us, to text us, to support us, that like they automatically should just do that, regardless of what is going on in their own lives. And I think that's just a conversation that we don't have very often because there's a tremendous amount of humility in being willing to acknowledge that we are holding that entitlement. And then we get upset with them when they don't fulfill our expectations, right? Regardless of whether or not those expectations were reasonable to put out there in the first place. And so, like expectations of support. So for instance, like one of my best friends, Blair, she's a wonderful human being. And she's been through a lot and she's going through a lot and whatnot. And she's been there for me for a tremendous amount of stuff in my life. I had the expectation that she was going to be there for me during this breakup when I had tremendous struggles with my mental health and just felt blindsided by it. And she didn't have the bandwidth to do so. That does not make her a bad friend. Let me reiterate that. That does not make her a bad friend. And it took a while. Like I was pretty like devastated, I want to say, for like at least a week. So I went through like all the stages of grief, anger, all these different things, right? Yeah. Because I was just like, what the F? Like, how can you not care? Like it was like one of the hardest moments for me. And I just like could not wrap my head around it until I was able to like breathe and remember who she was and how she'd been there for me. And just because she couldn't be there didn't mean she didn't love me. And I had to just give her the space to live her own life. And I had to find resources elsewhere. And that's the thing with us with expectations is that like, if we talk to somebody and we even express ourselves well, be like, hey, I'd like expect you to do this. and they're like, I can't, or I won't, or that's not in alignment with my values, then we have to sit back and honor that other person that's in front of us, regardless of whether or not we agree with it, or if it hurts our feelings,
Yep.
or messes with our mental health. And we have to say, okay, I am an autonomous human being, and there are several billion people out there, and there are resources, whether or not we are willing to come full circle to you, Linda, willing to receive help for the things that we need and vulnerably share the things that we're struggling with is different. But that doesn't mean that there aren't people out there that are willing and able to help us with whatever those expectations that we have that need to be met. And having conversations with the people that we're in relationship, if it's outside of the parameters of that relationship that we've defined, then having to say, okay, well, this is what I need versus want. These are two very different things that I think it's important for people to acknowledge. And say, okay, well, this is outside of the realm of the rules, the values we've set for our relationship. So we either need to adapt rules to our relationship, or we need to end the relationship. And that is really painful to do. But as my father tells me, and this is a terrible quote, but I'm going to say it anyways, there are two ways to cut off a dog's tail. You can either cut it off an inch at a time, or you can cut it off all at once. So you can cut it off all at once, or you can cut it off an inch at a time so it hurts less. I'm pretty sure you guys get the sarcasm there. And the fact of the matter is, in life, we don't usually want to cut it off all at once because it's very painful. We oftentimes just drag it out, we cut it off an inch at a time, and we convince ourselves that it hurts less as we delay the inevitable or create enough of a level of comfortability that we become complacent in our lives and convince ourselves that it's okay for us to sacrifice our values. It's okay for us to sacrifice our dreams. It's okay for us to play at a lower level rather than to end that relationship that once have been phenomenally great, but now no longer serves you. And that's where loss comes from expectations, because we also have expectations of ourselves. And those expectations oftentimes comes from familial indoctrination or social indoctrination, or this dream that you might have had as a youth that no longer remotely applies to where you are today and the wisdom you've acquired thereof. Letting go of it is like, I'm failing that expectation that I set in a different time of my life that I might have known much less than I do now. And to hold it actually isn't remotely within the bounds of my current value system. But you have to grieve the loss of that expectation to move forward, to get to be to your greatest self. And just let go of expectations and really just do your best to find your voice, articulate your needs and your values with all those around you, and be honest with yourself. Because at the end of the day, you're the person you have to look at in the mirror. And the right people will stick with you, and they will grow with you, and they will love you for who you are, regardless of how messy it is. And the wrong people may judge you, but they're the wrong people. And so their judgment doesn't matter. And that is their journey to find someone else.
Of course. And I think you made a comment about your friend. I go back to that because that was really powerful for me when you and I spoke of that before. And you made you said here, it's not that she didn't love me. It's almost like she loved me because she could say that. Or she said that because she loved me, and she knew that she might have to struggle through that, but I know we'll still be friends. And I can say that takes a strength on both of your parts. And that was really powerful for me when you said that before, personally, because that was like, that's a very healthy relationship that you have. And that's kudos to the two of you that you have that.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. And sometimes it's like, maybe it will take us 5 years to stabilize our lives on either side, but hoping that life is long. And true friendships are those that you can step away from for any amount of time and find what you need elsewhere for each stage of your life. and know that the purity of your heart will bring you back when it's time.
Exactly. Such a rich conversation. I like this. So let's step away from that part a bit.
Sure.
I have a question. I saw this a couple weeks ago, and I started to include it in here because I think it's for me it was a powerful question. It's like, what's the bravest thing you ever said?
It's funny. Oh, there's like so many. It's hard, but like the first thing that like just popped into my head
Yep.
was I don't love you anymore.
Yep. Yep. Tough one.
And the second one might be that I love myself
There you go.
because I didn't for a very long time.
Exactly. Interesting
They're
for
coming
me,
to,
it
yeah.
was I love you, and that was said to a parent because I came from an era where love wasn't said, it was implied, and I knew we were loved, and childhood was wonderful, and we knew it and we embodied it, that feeling was there, but the
Yeah.
words were never there. So to say later in life to a parent, I love you, was hard.
Yeah.
It doesn't, I mean, I say it to my children all the time and we say it back. We
Yeah.
change that loop, but to say it to a parent later on in life is just like, I hope they receive it. And they did. But so it goes back to love. All of these statements go back to
All these
love.
statements, yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
And it is recently, like one of the other things that is that when I asked for help recently after Labor Day, and I posted in a group that I was not okay.
Yeah.
And that I needed help.
Yeah.
And because it's just like when you do something like that, when you admit that you're not okay,
Yeah.
to the point that you're posting on a public forum and you're just like screaming for help and you're just like, I can't do this anymore.
Yeah.
I can't do this by myself.
Yeah.
Because I did the first like 6 weeks of this breakup by myself, and it was just devastating and anguish and not functional. And I just like, in everything that I knew how to do as an empowerment coach and all the life lessons that I've had, I used everything that I could. And then at some point you're just like, it's not enough. This is too hard.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. And you're alone. I would imagine
I felt so alone.
Alone. Yeah.
I felt so alone and without community. And that's not the irony, because like you look in the people that I have in networks around the world, like I know really amazing people who I care about and they care about me, but we're all busy with our lives, right? And you don't necessarily notice when somebody's struggling.
Yeah.
And again, that doesn't mean that people don't care about you.
No.
It just means that sometimes you have to use your voice to say, hey, I need help.
Yeah.
And then people have the opportunity to be like, oh shit, like I need to reach out to her.
Well,
And when I did that, I
yeah.
had like 11 women pop up, and like some women who had never even met me in that group. This group I'm very well respected in this community that I'm in. But I still didn't think of them as community because I've been such a loner for all my life. Like I know tons of people, but like I bounce from place to place to place to place. I'm like the person that comes in, I'm the catalyst, I change things and then I leave. Like, sweet, you're better, you're changing, you're working on yourself. Fantastic. I'm out. On to the next. But that doesn't leave a lot for myself, right? Because then I don't have established communities. Like I don't have close-knit friends. Like that's part of the reason I'm so phenomenal at making friends, is because when you bounce from place to place to place and you have nothing and nobody, that's what you have to do, especially in the type of work that I do. Like I have to go out and put myself into the public. I have to create relationships. But when you're hurting and you're in a new community, to be vulnerable like that takes tremendous courage, because like I do not have deep friendships with these people. Like these people are new to me within the last 2.5 years. And I haven't spent a lot of time with them. So yeah, courage again is like being your authentic self for all the pieces, like the brilliance, the messiness, the pain, the uniqueness of what you have to offer the world, all of it.
Yeah.
Like, and just not shaming yourself for any of it.
Exactly.
Just be like, here I am, take it or leave it. This is what I'm capable of doing. this is what I can't. Like, I have bandwidth
Exactly.
on this
Yeah.
day to help you. I do not have bandwidth on this day to help you. And giving yourself the grace to say, no, I'm having this boundary. And if that means we can't be friends anymore, that's okay. If that means I can't have this job anymore, that's okay. Because, like, at the end of the day, I have to choose me. I have to choose my
Mhm.
mental health. I have to choose my physical health. I have to choose my financial health.
Mhm.
And any person who really sees me, knows me as a person, because have a huge heart for my like community and friends, and
Mhm.
I'm extremely loyal. And if I tell you I can't show up for you, there's a damn good
There's
reason.
a reason for it. Absolutely. Absolutely. And well, and it's so interesting we're having this conversation, because I had a conversation again this afternoon with 10 women of um we all deeply resonated, but and we talked about community and showing up and living like we were talking about living in a community in a different way.
Yeah.
And that was in it. That was in it, is this showing up authentically, but amongst not all just the good, having to have authentic conflict and having to have those tough
That's
conversations
a
and being able to say,
big one.
if I'm going to take, why does that, whatever is said here, why does that trigger me? I'm going to take that in myself and I'm going to look at it. So
Yeah.
it's really interesting that we've had this conversation this way, because it really ties in together, is this absolutely authentic self in
Yeah.
authentic community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
and we
there's
all
two
have to
things
do
that I
that.
want to
Yeah.
say to that, because the word narcissism is thrown around a lot lately.
Yeah.
It's been thrown at me. I don't appreciate it, but like, whatever, it is what it is. Because of what I just said, for instance, and reminding people that there are times when it's important for us to show up for people to support them when they are not going to have bandwidth to support you in return.
Yep.
And you cannot functionally expect that person to show up for you. You need to find your support somewhere else. And that does not mean that that person is selfish,
Yep.
but it can be considered selfish if you expect the same from a
The
person who
expectations.
is asking you for help to begin with. And because that is an unreasonable and quite unfair expectation, because then if you flip it around to them, which I had this happen to me, unfortunately, um, and you say like, well, I'm there for you all the time, and I am just asking you to support me in these like 1, 2, 3 times. I'm just asking for this little bit. Why can't you be there for me? And that is devastating to a person who loves the other person that's saying that.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to show up for you, but I can't. And that just can spin people out that much further. But it's hard for a person when you like give and give, especially if it's for a long period of time,
Sure.
because you have burnout for people when it comes to
Sure.
caretaking. And that's where it comes on the other person too. When you're like, when I'm getting close to hitting the wall and being like, I've supported you for this period of time, I can't do it anymore because it's been negatively impacting my mental health. And saying like, I need you, either I'm happy to find somebody else for you, or like I waited too long and you're gonna have to, and I hate to have to feel like I'm dropping you on your ass, but like you're gonna have to find the other support, because that's not on that other person to support you, because that's also entitlement. If you have that expectation that that person is going to support you indefinitely, that is also entitlement.
Exactly.
And so, and these are just the conversations that we don't have, because then when you get into that place of burnout, then like that's when the revolving trigger door happens, and then things amp and amp and amp, and then you have like this giant explosion. It's terrible and everything falls apart because expectations create loss in these sorts of situations.
Exactly.
And the other part is that I'll briefly say, because I'm sure we need to wrap up, is that somebody asked me yesterday about self-love. And she was just like, how do you help somebody recognize self-love, and how do you get to that point yourself? My answer to that, for anybody out there that's wondering and wants my 2 cents, is that in order to love yourself fully and authentically, you have to dive into the deep dark and face the parts of you that are ugly and uncomfortable that you do not want to look at. And if you need somebody to support you in that, like a therapist or a friend or a coach or whatever, do that if you do not have the bandwidth to face those things on your own. And there is no shame in that. And I highly recommend that for facilitation. But in order to fully love yourself, you have to love the ugly parts too. You have to like honor the trauma and the triggers. And that's not justifying the actions of the people that helped create those spaces within you. But it's honoring the part that like I love myself regardless of it. And for the wisdom that those pieces and the triggers and the ugly things will give me in the times of which I am ready to face it.
Mhm.
And that is what makes yourself beautiful.
Absolutely. Well said. Thank you for including that.
You're welcome.
So then I think that does take us into the quote that you shared, which is the Serenity Prayer. Can
Yes.
we unpack? Why is that? Why does that? I think we can, by this time, I think we can all go, "Oh,
Sure.
yeah." But do you want to just touch on that one a bit? Why you chose that one?
Absolutely. And I've altered it a little bit. So it's God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage and discipline to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference.
Nice.
And I literally am about ready to have this quote tattooed on the inside of my left arm because I have had to say this thing to myself so much over the course of my life, but especially in the last 2 months, because there was so much that I could not change, and serenity was certainly lacking, and courage was required, and as was discipline. So I say the discipline piece because when you are triggered and you are having a conversation with somebody, it is oftentimes a very important thing to do is to walk away.
Yep.
If you do not have the discipline to shut your mouth when you are being irrational and to own the fact that you are being irrational, because we've all been there.
Been there, yep.
It does not make us terrible people, but it can make us do terrible things. So, I was not always successful at walking away when I was in triggered spaces. And I'm not a perfect person, and those are not moments that I'm proud of. And my ex is not fully responsible for how things went down because I definitely had my fair share of mismanaging conversations. And that is me being humble and honest, which I think is important. But I've also done a tremendous amount of therapy since then. Read a lot of books and listened to them on Audible and done a lot of journaling and gotten support from friends. So it's about the evolutionary process and not shaming yourself for the things that you mismanaged, because we've all mismanaged things in life.
Yeah.
But the discipline is definitely like acknowledging, hey, okay, I'm not doing the best job in the situation. And I need to maybe take all of the energy that I currently have to close my mouth and force my body to walk in the other direction.
Exactly.
And maybe that's you like literally locking yourself in your bedroom because you're like, nope, nope, can't talk to you right now.
Yep.
You're like, I gotta like turn off my phone and I gotta like hit my pillow a bunch of times, or like whatever you need to do.
Exactly.
Or maybe you're just like crying and you're like, I'm just gonna like lay on the floor, stop for a
Grow
while
up.
because
Yeah.
this just sucks. And I got a lot of grief going on. And but yeah, so the discipline and the wisdom to know the difference is really about honoring what our bandwidth is, what knowledge base we have, how much we are willing to see something from another person's perspective, because in those moments it can be extraordinarily difficult to take a breath and see something from somebody else's perspective. And even harder, so hard, is when they're right. You just hate that they're right, like, so much. It makes you so mad that they're right, and you're just like, "My ego may or may not, in this moment, allow me to tell you that you're right, and that's part of the reason that I'm just, like, really cranky right now."
Yeah.
And then, like, later, you have to go and eat crow. It's, like, super delicious. I've had it so many times.
It's lovely.
But yeah, that's the discipline and the wisdom.
Yeah, I
And
love that. Yeah. It's almost an awareness in there too.
Yes,
That
absolutely. An
awareness that I
awareness.
am acting like this, or I am being irrational, and okay, then step back and
that's
have
the
that
courage
discipline.
because
Yeah.
yeah, because you have to have courage to be willing to look at yourself when
Yeah.
in those ugly moments, when we're being less than ideal in our interactions with people, when our monkey mind is like going crazy and telling us all these like stories and like
Yeah.
why like all our limiting beliefs come up and our like wounded inner child decides they want to take center stage.
Exactly.
Like all your unhealed trauma. It's like, hey, so we got like this great show over here. We really think that you should see it. So yeah.
It's funny. It's funny you say that. And I'm always taken back when I was teaching writing lessons years, millennia ago. It was this thing about always say, teachers would say or coaches would say, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. And as therapy and equine assisted learning all came along, it was that allowing to be afraid and
Oh my
saying
gosh, it's
to
so
the
important.
horse, I'm afraid. And that's what we would teach in our lessons is like, I'd never say, don't be afraid. Tell the horse you're afraid because that's authenticity. And that's
Yes.
what they want. So in
Right.
life, that's like, yeah, it's okay to be afraid. It's okay to be angry. And it's a good mess. Like, look at those messy parts, everything you've said there, because that's being real.
Yeah.
That's being you and admitting, what, there's a messy part right now. So,
Yeah.
here it
And
is.
the people may or may not forgive you for those things that you said in those moments.
Yeah.
And as difficult and painful as that is when people walk away from you,
Mhm.
that's your mistake to own. And
Yep.
you can grieve the loss of that friendship or that relationship or whatever it is, but you have to honor them in that too, because they're
Of
just
course.
like, I've hit a boundary, you've broken trust, whatever the situation is for anybody that's in that
Mhm.
situation.
Yeah.
But that's really about consent and honoring boundaries, because when we cross
Exactly.
them, like there are consequences. And
Exactly.
regardless of whether or not we agree with how that person is reacting to it or yeah, appreciate how they manage it, it's still their journey. And you have to take a step back and heal what you can of your own and not shame yourself and feel guilt. It's just recognizing me like, okay, here's where I went wrong. It's like a math problem. You're like, okay, here's
Mhm.
where I went wrong. This is where it came from. This is what I need to do to address it. And this is what I need to do to not put myself in the position to do it again.
Yeah. Plus minus divided equals
Exactly.
roughly
Equal sanity in better
sanity,
relationships with self and
authenticity.
others.
Exactly. There we go. Wow, that's a good one. So
Yeah.
if you could distill all of this, like just beautiful wisdom that you've shared with us, could you, if you were to give us two real golden nuggets that you wanted us to take to remember? I'm sure we will sit and listen to this and watch it. But if you could say, here's two shining bright nuggets, take these with you.
Two bright, shiny nuggets. Find one person in your life, even if it's developing a relationship with a stranger in conversation, that you feel that you can be your full self with,
Mm,
that you know for a fact will tell you the truth, and that you will accept that truth from them without judgment of them.
nice.
Because having that one person very well may save your life.
Yeah.
And we all have to have at least one person that we implicitly trust and feel valued by.
Mm,
Because it's not just about trusting them. Like you have to feel that they value you and you have to offer the same in return.
exactly. Exactly.
But
Beautiful.
authenticity is what's required for that
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
trust. Yeah.
Awesome. Got another
Um, and a second one is play.
one?
Too
So good.
often as adults, we make all the excuses in the world for why we can't play,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, why can't we not have fun? And um, I always find this interesting when I talk to adults and I was like, what are you doing to have fun in your life? And sometimes they just are like, nothing, I'm too busy. And just honoring that it's so important to take time for yourself to play. Even
Mm-hmm.
if you're like crazy busy with like work and kids, maybe it's just like 10 minutes in a day. And remembering that play looks different for
Of
everybody,
course.
because sometimes a person can be sitting on a bench looking out at the sky and having the most amazing, like playful fantasy going on in their mind.
No. Exactly.
Right. And that's why play therapy is amazing, and researching all the different ways that people can play. And yeah, allowing yourself that freedom and remembering what wonder is. Because as adults, we become so jaded by life that we forget to look at the simple wonders,
Mm-hmm.
like the ingenuity of simply like a plastic bag.
Yep.
Somebody invented that.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody marketed that, and now they're everywhere for good or for evil.
Yeah.
But they are everywhere. You know,
Yeah.
like everything that's out there. It's incredible that some person took the time and was brave. Like you can find bravery and wonder everywhere you
Everywhere.
look,
Yeah.
everywhere. And I feel like we're so used to all these material objects that we forget how incredible it is that they exist in the first place.
There was
So
something a while back. I'm sure it's online or something, but taking a pencil and looking at, oh, look at all these pieces of the pencil. Somebody had to cut the wood. Somebody had
right.
to do all of these different pieces, and you go back and you go back and and by the end you're like, whoa, this
Yeah.
tiny little thing has had so many hands on it
Hands
and
on it.
so many
Yeah.
hearts in it, and it's incredible. So I love that.
Yeah.
I love that, and that in itself is that just that wonderment of,
It's
yeah.
a lot easier to feel gratitude in life if you can see the wonder in it.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah, absolutely. That little raccoon that was at my door today, wanting to get in. My
He's like,
dogs were
hey.
like, oh, he was. He was. We're like, you can say hi, but you can't come in. But there was beauty in the moment, and neighbors were standing there going, but he's rabid. Like, he's not. He wants to say hi to my dogs. He's probably hungry. And
Yeah.
no, I'm not going to feed him. Don't worry. But it was
I'm
a
not encouraging
beautiful,
this behavior.
but it was a beautiful moment. And even the dogs were
Yeah.
like sort of touching noses and not, it was a beautiful interspecies moment,
Yeah.
really. So yeah, I'm sure there could have been many reasons why we shouldn't do it, but we did it. And it was actually really cute. So
Yeah.
I have video proof. Uh anyhow, for our last bit, can you tell us what you have going on? What's the wonderful things? I know you do so much, but what's some
I
of
do
those wonderful things
so
that
much.
you have going on?
So I've started doing weekly collaboration calls, like connection calls, support calls, whatever you want to call them, for my women's group, the Phoenix Rising Women's Group on Facebook. The times change because I am trying to serve women in different time zones. So you just have to pop in the group if you're a lady. For the men, I have global resources for men, and I host 2 of those calls a month for support calls for the guys, because everybody deserves to have a voice and a safe place to articulate it within. And then I have the Playful Pivot. So it's playfulpivot.com. And that's where you can find me for empowerment coaching, for people pleasers, to help with communication, boundaries, play, authenticity, like all those good things, basically. And I tailor make my sessions to each individual and what's going on with them. And if for any reason I cannot serve them and do not have the knowledge, bandwidth, or space that I can facilitate that, I refer them out to somebody else within the vast network of people I have in the world. And you can find my different interviews on horsepower, empowerment through connection, and then global resources for men on
You
YouTube.
have a lot going on, girl.
So many things. And then I have my massage business
I
that
was
I'm
gonna say
running,
this is
and
you
just
do your
like,
massage too.
yeah. But
Life is
yeah,
full. Life is full. Or
life
it's
is
busy, it's full.
no, it's full. It's really great. And I've just been spending so much time working on myself, especially since coming, because I took a break from coaching because I was struggling with all those things that I typically teach people about. And I don't like to be a hypocrite. So I was like, I'm just going to shelve this for a minute. But as I've come out of this space and finally got over my ex, and then just in a much healthier headspace and more grounded and peaceful, I'm honestly like in the best space I think I've ever been in my life in this last week, despite not being great about feeding myself. That part hasn't come back into full circle. I'm working on it. We can't do it all at the same time. But yeah, no, I feel very, very happy finally, and much more like myself. And that's because I dove into the deep dark so that I could face the things that weren't functional about me that needed to be addressed. And because practicing what you preach is important, even when you mess it up from time to time.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, my friend, this has been a wonderful conversation.
Thank
We
you. It
will
has indeed.
post all of the stuff that you're doing, and any a few things that we've talked about. We'll post all those when we post this video later. But yeah, thank you. I love chatting with you. And we went over by
Likewise.
20 minutes, and that's okay because it
Nice.
was what needed to be talked about. And I love that
That was
we
rich.
got a chance to do it. Exactly. It was rich.
Rich
Um,
conversation.
exactly. And I wish your groups well and wish you well. I'm going to look into your
Yeah.
Phoenix Rising group and
Thank you.
see what that's all about. And just keep talking to people in cars, girl.
I will. I love it. I love just like I'm looking over at people sometimes and I'll like good song will be on and I'll just be like dancing. And then sometimes they'll dance with me and be all silly, or sometimes they'll just smile.
Or
And
sometimes
then
you'll go
sometimes they just
to
have blinders on it because they're just like, nope, I'm not engaging. I'm not in the headspace for that. Sometimes I'll just like roll my window down and get somebody's attention and be like, hey, I hope you have a great day. And they'll be like, thanks. And then we'll leave. And that'll be
And you're
all that it
gone.
is. But it can like totally change somebody's day and take them from like to like, eh.
It's a random
So
act of kindness
it's a random act of kindness,
to
just
put a
like
smile on
acknowledging
somebody's face.
people. Yeah,
Exactly.
I love
Exactly.
just I don't care if I have to act stupid to get it. Like I love making people smile and laugh. Like
Yeah.
I've always been like that.
Well, you have made us laugh. You have made us think. You have made us consider. You have made us love. You have done all of that in this. I thank you so much for that.
Many thanks, my friend.
We will post this probably within a day or so for those that are watching or listening. And if anybody is interested in sharing their voice, I would love to talk to a few more people in the next little while before that Christmas comes on and we have to sort of step back and let everybody do their thing. I would
Experience the
love
holidays.
I would love to talk to some artists that have found a voice through art or spoken
I
word even. I would
was
love
gonna say
to
music, musical
or
artists.
music, exactly. I would love to branch out in those ways to see what how we find our voice in different ways. And
Have more
so
connections for you.
there we go. Perfect.
Always.
Anyhow, thank you all for being here tonight or today or whenever you're listening to this. And we'll see
Thank you, indeed.
you on number 21. Take
Ooh.
care.